Juggalos, Juggalettes, Chop Chop. Welcome to episode 7 of Hatchet Chat with your boy, MC Lars. This week we're going to talk about the Terror Wheel. I know it's been a minute since my last episode. Since then, we played the Gathering of the Juggalos, Megaran and I. Big shout out to Jump Steady for inviting us to come. It was tight. We met ICP, we met Misery. We got to hang out with everyone. Got to hang out with DJ Clay. ABK gave me daps, gave me a hug after the set. It was tight. That was not last summer, the summer before. So it's been a minute. Shaggy had some advice for how to stop getting coronavirus. I don't know if it's scientifically accurate.
Dirt snow. God made dirt. Dirt don't hurt. Take out the rocks, and then it'll build your immune system.
And everything's a little weird right now. So I guess because of that, I have a nostalgic feeling in my heart for the Juggalo discography, and I wanted to jump back into the mix and return where I left off. So I wanted to shout out two homies, MC Snax for helping me with the script and the research and the editing, and DanyDoomzday, great homies. Let's get right into it. This is episode 7, The Terror Wheel. So since we last spoke, we were talking about Ringmaster. And so alternative music kind of underwent this interesting transformation in 1994, because in April, Kurt Cobain took his life, and that year, Beck's Mellow Gold came out, Nine Inch Nails' Downward Spiral, Soundgarden's Super Unknown. Alternative music was such a huge selling thing in the 90s. And I think ICP, their connection to rock music kind of became more evident, and then later with Riddlebox and then Malenko, they'd add more guitar and tap into the rap metal thing that was brewing. So the timing of everything to make ICP a cultural phenomenon was huge, and that's what we're going to talk about and how this EP solidified their status. This EP was released on August 5th, 1994 with Mikey Clark doing most of the production. It's the second of the sideshow EPs, meaning they put out these short little EPs in between albums to tide the fans over. We last saw a sideshow EP with Beverly Kills 50187, but the Terror Wheel is totally special. And Violent J talked about how he got inspired to do this because Isham and his brother James Smith worked at Real Life Productions. That was their label. They would put out these EPs in between their projects, and so Psychopathic was kind of emulating Isham because, as you know, for those of you who've read Behind the Paint, those of you who've been following the Juggalos since day one, Isham and his business practices were a huge influence on ICP.
Our entire operation is blueprinted from Real Life Productions.
These EPs serve to promote and keep people talking about ICP, and they served as a way to promote the next Joker's cards, which we will talk about in the next episode. Whoop whoop, Riddlebox. But I'm getting ahead of myself, dog. We gotta slow down and talk about how this flavor helped create a radio hit for ICP in Detroit, which split their wigs back, blew up their melons. That's like how Violent J would talk. My wig was so flipped back that it was against the wall in the back.
You're pushing my wig back further and further.
Oh yeah. Moby. We got to talk about the Moby connection. So the art for this was taken from Moby's Go Remix EP, which was just the face, like the screaming face. It was just, they just ganked it from Moby's album, from the single, and used it. No big deal. Did Moby sue them? No. Is Moby known to have beef with Detroit hip-hop artists? Yes. See Eminem. Anyway, I read both of Moby's books, and Natalie Portman wasn't happy about the second one. Shout out to Moby, though. He's a straight-edge vegan, and you could argue that some of his religious and philosophical beliefs resonate with Insane Clown Posses, but we won't get into that. That's a whole nother series called Transcendent Migration of Philosophy.
You're pushing my wig back further and further.
All right, so let's get into this album. On the first track on the album, we are told of this ride in the Dark Carnival. Those of you just tuning in, the Dark Carnival is this metonymy for it's like Narnia, right? C.S. Lewis uses Narnia as a metaphor for heaven. The Dark Carnival for ICP is this metaphor for the gates to Shangri-La, meaning that it shows how society is classist, how poor people are looked down upon and gawked at like circus freaks, and how if you listen to what the different leaders of the Dark Carnival, the Joker's cards, what they have to say, you will gain your entrance into Shangri-La, or you will go down to Hell's Pit. So it kind of has this Egyptian theme that we talked about on the last episode. But let's talk about the album. So it starts off talking about these rides in the Dark Carnival, right? And it's like a creepy introduction. We are introduced to Willoughby Rags, a reoccurring character in the Dark Carnival mythos. I believe this is his first appearance, definitely not his last. Interesting trivia, in the Echo Side game, which many of you have played, Willoughby Rags has his own card. That means he's canonized in the Dark Carnival, whoop whoop. In 2018, for the free gift that ICP gave out at the seminar, the year that Mega Ran and I played, it was called Willoughby Rags Magical Bag of Poop, a throwback to the Terror Wheel introduction. It's crazy. It just doesn't get much fresher than Willoughby Rags. I thought I'd cite that character in depth because no other show on the internet, no other YouTube series will.
You're pushing my wig back further and further.
He is our host in the Terror Wheel, and we'll hear him throughout this EP. So let's keep it moving. So what else? So we got the introduction. Okay, Lars, we want to know about the flavor. We want to know about that wicked Dark Carnival magic. We want to know about what the Juggalos can expect from this EP. So before I go any further, I want to say this is my favorite EP, Sideshow EPs by ICP, and it has one of my favorite ICP songs, The Dead Body Man. The Dead Body Man is significant for several reasons. Let's go through them. It's been covered by different Juggalo artists. A lot of you know that ICP would sign other artists, and then they would do their interpretations or versions or remixes of old ICP songs. Dead Body Man was covered by Blaze Your Dead Homie.
I'm just a dead body man.
It was remixed by Ouija Mac.
Call me the dead body man. You can call me the dead body man.
So it's a Juggalo classic. This song also appears slightly altered on the third Joker's card, but I think the version on the Terror Wheel is the best. It's worth noting that this is the first song to receive like regular airplay. ICP had never heard their music on the radio, and it was an example of Alex being smart with how to get the Clowns' music out there. Radio is still important for artists, but back in the day, you could have like a viral terrestrial radio single, and that would open doors. So it was on the Detroit radio station. In the book, Jay talks about how they would drive around listening to it in the car, and it would flip their wigs back. They'd be against the back wall. You remember I said that earlier? That's what's up.
You're pushing my wig back further and further.
Violent J talks about how this radio station 96.3 played their song a lot. And he talked about how some Juggalos were like, oh, ICP sold out. They're on local radio. Y'all need to chill, okay? If you think that ICP's popularity peaked with this single, you're wrong. Because we got a long road ahead of us as we make the path to Shangri-La. Let's keep it moving, y'all. Around this time, the Metro Times, which was a Detroit newspaper, did an article on ICP, and this was some of their first local press that was super significant. They began to gain local momentum, and they had a show with Too Short where they had a bigger draw than him. And it was surprising because Too Short is such a legendary rapper, but for ICP to be locally on the show outdrawing them, people were like, yo, there's something happening with this group. They also did shows with Outkast, MC Breed, and Coolio, which is kind of tight for the mid-90s. Rappers would be like, wow, these two dudes from Detroit definitely have something going on here. In Behind the Paint, Violent J talks about how Outkast were mad because they got Faygo all over their turntables, and ICP had to pay him $500 for the damages. Later, Outkast would have the biggest selling double rap album of all time, and this $500 might not be that much, but back in the day, that was important. So not long after this EP came out, ICP did their first Hollow Wicked. And the Hollow Wicked is their annual Halloween show that they still do in Detroit. They pressed up their first Hollow Wicked single called Dead Pumpkins, and this would be a tradition. They do this special show, and you could only get the single at this show that they would play every Halloween, and they still do. So the Juggalo movement was definitely in effect, even if it was regional. It was having annual events, radio play, press, destroyed turntables. It's crazy. Dead Body Man is an interesting song because it has some social commentary. It's the story of a dude who collects dead human bodies and drives around in a van. It also talks about the hypocrisy of how we value human life above other life. One of my favorite couplets is, if you think I'm sick, take a look at yourself. You got dead deer heads up on the shelf. On your keychain is a little baby rabbit's hand. I'm just the dead body man. Ooh, the vegans love those lyrics. Ouija Mac is feeling that couplet. Skitsofrantic is a high energy song that deals with mental illness and paranoia. And of course, the real word is schizophrenic. But ICP have been known to do their own interpretations of how they think words sound and then writing them phonetically. Skitsofrantic. You're schizophrenic, don't panic. Because that doesn't rhyme with schizophrenic. So that song is a classic example. So Mikey Clark is definitely the producer star who, in my opinion, produced ICP's best work. And you can hear like the high synths on this song indicative of gangster rap in the early mid-90s, like Dr. Dre's The Chronic being a big example. It's a G-Funk style. ICP liked West Coast and East Coast rap, because guess why? They were in the Midwest, and you can hear that in their material. It's so tight! Track 3, The Smog. This is an ominous track describing like a really scary situation that maybe we can identify right now. Everyone's a little paranoid and afraid to go outside. This is one of their classic jams. The theme of poisonous air and industrial waste and polluting and like the death of nature is very present throughout ICP's music. And it kind of, in my opinion, is why they celebrate the Shangri-La, the idea that like, even though Earth is kind of polluted right now, there's a better life that awaits us on the other side if we act right and help other people. And it's interesting how this song kind of came out before Flint and the water crisis. That's a common theme throughout ICP's work. You can hear this theme on Southwest Song, the similar theme about pollution.
Factory smoke and choke and pain, 'cause Delray funk is in my brain.
Detroit had a lot of industrial areas that ICP spent a lot of time around, so they talked about it. The Smog was originally called The Swarm, and they wrote it for a movie. This original version of The Smog, The Swarm, was later leaked online. Many of you Juggalos probably heard it on Napster, Kazaa, back in the day. Eventually, this song made its way onto Forgotten Freshness, Volume 6. The songs have a new resonance, a new meaning when we look back at the narratives. The song Out tells the story of Violent J going to go get groceries for his brother and his mom. And it's an example, I think ICP, especially Violent J, is such a great storyteller. And it talks about how dangerous Southwest Detroit was back in the mid-90s. So he's leaving the house to go get these groceries, right? Something that would be just like a mundane event. Oh, I went to the store to get milk and groceries becomes like this epic, violent adventure. And the song references Military Street, a street we would also later see in Halloween on Military Street. You see the connections. The final track on this EP is Amy's in the Attic, which has become a favorite amongst the Juggalos. So it's a story of a kid who accidentally kills his friend while playing, and because he's afraid of what will happen, he hides her body up in the attic. That's creepy, right? Very Edgar Allan Poe-esque. Over the years, the guilt begins to drive him crazy, and he wishes the event never happened. And he eventually hallucinates her ghost. And it's kind of like the Telltale Heart, right? Like I talked about Edgar Allan Poe. Someone who's guilty, and then their guilt drives them crazy. And I think also what's special about ICP is their ability to act and have an emotion. And as we talked about earlier, rock and alternative rock of this era was becoming more diverse and aggressive. And I feel like ICP channeled some of this emo, industrial metal energy because Jay sounds so frantic and freaked out on this song. Like he really channels this character. I think it's brilliant.
I must be stuck, I'm praying that I'm wrong. I pray it's just a fantasy that's carried on too long. Amy isn't dead, I never knew it, Amy. How is just a boy, how can you blame me?
Jay's brother Jump Steady would later do a sequel-esque song channeling this song on Master of the Flying Guillotine. The song's called Amy's Ghost, and it's like a part 2 to this song.
Once a young beauty who would catch the eye, now a corrupt vision that can only horrify. Then a vile reminisce plays across her mind, an evil boy pushing her to a death off a slide.
We will do Jump Steady's records on a future episode, but I thought we should mention that. So also part of this track is an outro that could be used to find a phone number to call to get more information. And ICP would do this a lot, like on Amazing Jekyll Brothers. They had a trivia question, and if you guessed you had the right answer, you get the number, you would call it, and it promoted the gathering of the Juggalos. So that was awesome. So if you called the number, it would reveal the name of the next Joker's card, 313-480-3910. Let's see what happens if we call it. Okay, number's not around anymore, but that's tight. I always like when they would do that. Overall, the Terror Wheel has become a classic hallmark of ICP's catalog. It has great storytelling, great great production, and characters that we would see throughout the rest of the Dark Carnival saga. This EP is interesting because ICP's career was gaining traction and they were about to sign with Jive Records and release Riddlebox, which is a whole nother story. We'll have to wait another 7 years for my next episode. Just kidding, I'll do it sooner. I'm MC Lars. I make music too. I'm also on Patreon. If you want to subscribe, check out more Hatchet chats or some of my songs. Shout out again to MC Snax and DanyDoomzday. Thank y'all. Hope you're staying safe. See you next week or whenever the next one is.